presents Scratch a Track,
the podcast where we debate which track to scratch off some of the most known and unknown albums of all time.
We live in an era of singles.
This is an album.
People no longer listen to an album for the work it truly is.
It kind of defines a band.
It's just not something that people relate to nowadays.
We've all gotten the dreaded.
It started out as a game.
Which track on the album would you scratch out if you had to? Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Scratch a Track presented by the Dude and Grim Show. I am the Dude and he is Grim, and we're very happy to have you here. How we doing there, Grim?
Doing well this evening, Deuterino, Deuteronomy.
Sweet. Yeah, dude, I feel like, I know I think the last one we did was another Thursday, but I feel like it's been a long time since we've done one of these. I don't know. It's weird.
It was a long week.
It was a long
It was
week.
a really grueling.
Yeah, dude, I couldn't even tell you what the hell I did, but I'm sure it was spectacular. But so yeah, speaking of going and whatnot, what has been going on is very, very close to the title of the album we're going to talk about. What's Going On by Marvin Gaye.
Yeah.
What are your initial thoughts and impressions about this album, my friend?
Well, I was introduced to this album late in high school by Mr. Toby Schuler. So shout out to Mr. Schuler for recommending that I listen to this, as it was described to me as kind of a like concept soul album. And so with that, I just, got a hold of a copy of it and started listening to it. And I always, I think that was a pretty adequate description, is the whole album flows really well, seems to have a consistent theme. Now, to be honest, I had a vague concept maybe at the time of what that theme was and what that theme meant. I think as in time, I've really understood it maybe a little bit more, apart from not having gone through it myself. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I had known of Marvin Gaye, and I'd known of basically the song "What's Going On," and the more I listened to it, I actually realized that there's a few songs in it that I had known, and they've been in movies and things, and just kind of picking up on that. But for listening to beginning to end, I initially didn't. It never really dawned on me or occurred to me that, hey, this is a concept album, where I was thinking it flows together or anything like that. But it certainly is that. And there is, it's a deep album. Like, it talks about a lot of the social injustices going on around the country, as well as everything that was going on in Vietnam. And he had a really big kind of personal relationship with that, because his brother was in Vietnam and would send him letters kind of describing things. And
that was something I didn't know.
Huge influence.
I thought that was really interesting, because I feel like it made it more personal. Not to say that, aside from his brother, that he wouldn't have had experiences or known people who had come back from the war, but I think that takes that experience to another level and makes it even more personal, therefore giving you a really good basis to write about.
Sure, it does. And he and I'll we can get to this a little bit, but kind of focusing more on the coming back from Vietnam and kind of getting back into society and trying to figure yourself out, and where you fit in and where you belong. That's something that I've seen a lot in movies, kind of like with Dead Presidents, Jacob's Ladder, The Deer Hunter for sure.
That's the one I was going to bring up.
Yeah, those ones are. It's very apparent, but to have an album kind of express those feelings and emotions is something that I hadn't really dealt with or experienced before. So I think that was really cool. And that's kind of, I think, one of the concepts. But
Yeah.
But he was, I mean, he was going, I think the only way to really say it is he was going through some shit at the time.
I was just going to get into that, because if you look at kind of what led up to this, in a way, it was kind of like a big comeback, I guess, if you will, for him. I mean, just before it started, he started working on it, or maybe in the midst of it. I mean, Tammy Terrell died of a brain tumor, and anyone who knows his body of work, I mean, those two partnered on a lot of classic Motown hits.
Right.
You know, she was his female counterpart, and
right. Yeah. I mean, and also I think it was, unfortunately, and it was the perfect storm. You know, Tammy Terrell passed away. His marriage failed. He was doing a ton of blow at the time. He had IRS troubles, and he was having issues with Motown Records. I mean, you know, that's not a great track that you're going down at that point. So
no, and it's interesting because in looking into it, you find out, I mean, everyone knows that knows about Motown would say that Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown Records, although responsible for a lot of great things, was very much like a control freak, and it was his way or the highway. And this album is similar to what I'm about to go into, but I believe that Stevie Wonder was the first Motown artist who had creative control over his own music. And that's you know, I'd not, maybe that wasn't that uncommon for the time, but it seems that, especially with Motown, they had such a sound and such a, you know, it was such an institution that he was not going to relinquish control, because he felt that he knew better than the artists. Yeah. And this album was one where, you know, Marvin Gaye ended up having the credit as producer, which I think was fairly unheard of at the time. Right.
Well, and that's not, this is not an uncommon story when it comes to record companies and what they want from their artists. You had a hit, you've had this hit. We basically want you to keep doing the same thing because we know that's what's going to sell.
Yeah.
And so when Marvin Gaye he went to Berry Gordy and said, "Hey, I think I want to do something a little more political. I want my music to say something, and I want it to reflect kind of the world that we're living in." Gordy was like, "Yeah, no, I don't think that's gonna work for. I don't think that's gonna work for us. So just keep doing what you're doing."
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, he Gaye just kind of went and he kind of did his own thing, I think very quietly. It sounds like he basically went and recorded what's going on, and he kind of picked and chose like the musicians that he wanted to work with on the album. And he said it was apparently it was a very, very laid back sessions, a lot of smoking pot and drinking scotch and everything.
Yeah. Which I mean, you in my opinion, at least in the opening track, What's Going On, it feels like that, you know, it's, and same thing with What's Happening, Brother. Like they both kind of have that sort of feel to them. But one thing I didn't know that I found interesting was that Marvin Gaye didn't fully write the song What's Going On. It was actually written by another Motown songwriter, Al Cleveland, who wrote a song based on his conversations with another soul singer, Ronaldo Benson, based on some of the things that he witnessed just kind of on tour and the things that he was seeing. But then I guess Marvin Gaye did add some of his own bits to it lyrically and musically, and you know, apparently recorded the song without necessarily thinking it was going to be this album, and gave it to Berry Gordy, who did not like it. And then behind the scenes, somebody, I can't recall the name, but somebody at Motown,
Harry Balk, he was another Motown executive.
Yeah, he kind of took it behind the scenes and pressed an initial I think it was 1,000 copies or something.
100,000.
Oh, I thought that was the second bit. Like he produced a small run, and then that was wildly successful. So he produced another larger run, which was the 100K. And then they were able to go back at that point to Berry Gordy and be like, look, you know, like, with all due respect, this has got some traction and it should be out there. And then as I understand it, recording the rest of the album kind of began.
Yeah, Gordy. I think he saw the light, and so he drove up to Marvin Gaye's house and basically said, "Hey, you can do whatever you want to finish the album. Just do it. Do it within 30 days, and we'll put it out."
Which I love.
And so that's where, it's like it's such a business American way to do things, right?
Yeah.
Like it's really funny. But that's when he got, just like you were saying with Stevie Wonder, I think that's where he got his creative control, and he was able to produce this album. And dude, from what I heard, like basically he recorded it. They recorded it within 10 days. Like it went.
Yeah,
really quick.
I think the basic tracks with like the Funk Brothers and a couple of the other people, and then I believe they went to L.A. or something at one point to get like some of the string arrangements and some of the other stuff.
Right.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. So it was once it was released. I mean, the album sold over 2 million copies in the first year, and it was got up to number 6 on the charts. It stayed on the charts for over a year, and just the single itself, "What's Going On," sold 2.5 million copies by the end of the year. I mean, that's pretty damn successful right there.
And I would argue, and not that I'm a great music historian, but I mean, at least in my upbringing, that was probably, aside from Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell, which a lot of those songs like "Ain't No Mountain High Enough" was a very famous one. But this was the one that I think for Marvin Gaye as a solo artist that I knew more so than any other song.
Yeah. Yep. And it was definitely, it was well received by critics. But then, once Gaye died or was killed in 1984, a lot of critics and people started kind of relooking and reevaluating the album and kind of its importance and what it stood for and everything. It's which is a very good thing. It's just unfortunate that it takes something like that to happen for people. Sure. People give it another look and listen and be like, "Oh, actually, this is a masterpiece."
Yeah. Well, okay, so not to jump too far ahead, but jumping into the tracks, you brought up something that is an important part of the whole Marvin Gaye story, which is his death at the hands of his father. I found it interesting when you listen to the lyrics in the song "What's Going On," which is the opening track. The lyric, "Father, Father, we don't have to escalate." It's like it's kind of like it foreshadows the whole thing.
It is interesting, and I haven't read too much about his death and anything, but I'm curious as to what their relationship was like and what led up to that. Do you know anything about that? I mean, I don't. I believe,
and again, this is without reading anything, I believe his father was a preacher. I think that could be wrong, but either way, I know that they did have sort of a troubled relationship, and I'm sure couple anything that would go along with that the fact that you have a hugely successful musician son, and I'm sure it was probably pretty rough.
Yeah, but it's interesting because if his father was a preacher, there's a lot of songs on this album that are sort of some religious songs, talk about God a lot, and talk a lot about love. That is definitely one of the themes in this album. Yeah, is there is the song "God is Love" and "Holy Holy." I mean, those are pretty to the point. So, but yeah, I don't know if you want to start getting into the songs here, man. You ready for that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, we kind of already did that with, Marvin Gaye Sr. was a Christian minister who was a strict disciplinarian and often physically punished his children.
Wow. Sounds like a really good father figure.
Yeah, there's a lot of other stuff, but we won't go into that. So anyways.
No.
Yeah, getting into the song. So we kind of covered the song "What's Going On." One other interesting point that I think is really cool is that I think there was a couple guys from the Detroit Lions and a guy from the Detroit Pistons that
David Bing.
Yeah, that Marvin Gaye kind of recruited to do some of like the talking back and forth, to give it that feel of like people hanging out and
Right. Well, yeah, before we get fully into the album, at one point it was when he was taking a break from things. He got really back in touch with his spirituality, and he started to pursue a career in football with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah,
and I guess the owner, that didn't really pan out. The owner said, if you got any sort of injury that could really derail your music career, so so he decided, and I think it was a good decision to go back into music, get back in the studio, back in the studio. But yeah, so with What's Going On, actually the first time I think I actually heard this song, it's in the movie Jerry Maguire when Tom Cruise and Renee Zellweger get married and Cuba Gooding Jr. like sings it at their wedding or something. That's
funny.
I think that might have been like the first time I really realized like this song and knew it. But yeah, it is kind of funny. But so one thing about this song, and I'm not sure if you saw this, you'll notice in this song and a lot of the songs, the vocals are doubled.
Yeah. And that was by mistake. Yeah, I found that really interesting. Really one of those happy accidents that turned into gold. But yeah.
So I guess how it happened is Marvin Gaye, he recorded 2 vocal tracks for the song, and he wanted to listen to each track to decide which one was better. And somehow the engineers accidentally merged the tracks together or played them together. And they thought it was, it was like obviously a mistake. And then he heard it and he was like, that's awesome. We're going to do that.
Yeah.
And it's really cool, man. I really like it on this song. I really, really like it on this song. But yeah, this was, I think, you talked a little bit about this song and how it was, he shares, I think, kind of a partial writing credit, but it is, a protest song about Vietnam itself, and then all about the violent protests that were going on in the United States at that time as well. So
yeah, it's kind of like the microcosm of all the other songs together, right? I mean, it's like this whole big scope of, what's going on?
Yeah. What's going on? I mean, dude, you really can't say any better than that. So, and then we go into the second song, and these songs I think they kind of flow right into each other, right?
Yeah, they do. And they have such a similar sound too.
That's one thing I was going to say. And that really helps when you flow in. But yeah, What's Happening, Brother? And that was dedicated to his brother, Frankie, who was the Vietnam veteran. And it kind of explains the disillusionment for war veterans when they return to just kind of the civilian life and how disconnected they are and how tough that is. So, and it does have a very similar feeling. One thing I really like about, I think, this song and a few of the other songs, I love it when they use the congos. It's a really cool sound for this album. I really like it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're riding on this, and then you go into Flying High in the Friendly Sky, which is obviously about drug use. I would probably argue most specifically heroin would be because I think that was a big thing for a lot of the guys when they got back, was heroin specifically. And, the song kind of has that sort of feel to it. It's kind of slow and trippy. And, it basically talks about drug use and how it hooks you and what does he say? Something about that makes slaves out of men.
Yeah.
And
and you can definitely tell from the lyrics. I mean, that is very apparent. But the way it's kind of told a little bit, almost as sort of a story about, you start the day and you're okay.
Yeah.
But then it kind of creeps up on you and you're like, I need my fix.
Yep.
So, it is kind of more of a story in that regard. The next track we have is Save the Children, which is, kind of what it sounds like it is. It's definitely like an emotional plea to all the disadvantaged children that are out there in the world. And it's interesting. I think of this song almost as sort of like a duet, because he speaks the words and then he sings them, and he'll speak them and then he sings them.
One thing I do like about the way he does it and how he phrases it is it's almost like he's kind of talking about everything that goes along with this and contemplating it. And then at some point he's like, you know what? Let's save the children. Yeah. just his phrasing to go into it. I find that kind of funny.
Right. No, it is good. It is good. And then that flows, I think that just flows right into To God Is Good, which is the shortest song on the album. I mean, it's a minute and 42 seconds, and it has this, I mean, or God is good. God is love,
dude.
Sorry. Yeah. God is love. It took me back to my, elementary school and high school days at
going
Catholic Central
here.
There. So, going to church. But yeah, on this song, the doubled vocals are really apparent. It talks about God and basically it just says, hey, we need to love each other. It's really to the point for the most part.
Yep. And then interesting that I think it's kind of a nice tie-in is that then he goes into Mercy, Mercy Me, the Ecology, which is kind of about the environment, and interesting to have that being talked about then. I think before that was in the forefront of being a political issue.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't even know if people knew like what the ozone was back then, or people weren't really talking about it, and global warming or anything. Yeah. For 1971, it definitely feels a little ahead of its time, but he's talking about radiation and pollution.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting. I really found that to be interesting, and it's one of my more favorite songs on the album.
Really good song.
I did feel like, and I don't know if you noticed this, or maybe if you go back and listen to it, I did feel like the transition from God is love right into Mercy Me, it seems a little abrupt. Like it just wasn't this smooth flowy transition. It just kind of like chopped in. It was strange.
Well, yeah, and who knows how it was recorded and what their means were to splice the tapes together, and I don't know.
Right.
But I know what you mean.
Right.
It does kind of just pop right in there.
Yeah.
Which you don't have a problem because now we flip the record.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, now we get to side 2. So Mercy Me is we end that side 1. I think it's a great way to end the side, but then we start side 2 with Right On, which is the longest song in the album at 7.5 minutes. Yep. And it's really upbeat, got a nice piano and flute parts. And then so I know how, you've done it in the past with like kind of, playing, using something and playing like the music stand or
like
whatever.
A Guiro?
I guess is that what it is? Yeah. I mean, it's
but he has a real one. I did it with a gooseneck and a knife, but
exactly. So
they had a real one.
You work with what you have. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. But it's interesting because all the songs leading up to this, his vocals are very, very prominent because, I mean, he's, I think, the focal point. Mm-hmm. But this song actually starts off, and his vocals are definitely more in the background, and they're not as up front. And then I think about a minute or so into the song, they come up, and his vocals are alongside with the flute that's playing. And to me, instrumentally, this is my favorite song on the album. I just think it's I love there's a bunch of different parts. The flute, there's a saxophone gets this little squeal in there, and it gets a little funky, and the piano. But I just feel like the way the song goes instrumentally, this is definitely my favorite song on the album.
Yeah, I can see that. It really that's why I think it's a cool way to start side 2, like you'd mentioned, just because it's kind of a nice change. And not to say that it doesn't fit with the feel of the rest of the album, but yeah, there's a noticeable kind of pickup right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think this one really, to me, talks about like the social aspects of it, because you're taught, his lyrics are kind of talking about some of us are born with races to win, and then the one that I always found funny is like, but then there's some of us who simply like to socialize, like
There's
kind of just kind of hanging out, man.
Hanging out, man. Hanging out. Yeah, definitely.
But
so yeah.
No. I was just gonna say it's an interesting then to go into Holy.
Holy.
I know I do really enjoy the wordplay with that one.
Yeah, it's good.
It like
It is good.
Completely holy, not holy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is one of the, I guess you could say it kind of is the brother or sister to God is Love with sort of, I guess, sort of religious undertones. But it transitions nice and slowly. It has a very kind of relaxed and sober feel to it.
Yeah.
And it's, come together, proclaim love as our salvation. And it's a lot about love and making the world a better place. So it's, that's that kind of song.
And then right before Inner City Blues, right, to top off the album, which this is also one of my favorite ones instrumentally. I do. Okay. I really enjoy the Make Me Wanna Holler lyric. It's a good lyric. It's well placed, and it's a really nice piano part. And I think it's an interesting way to end the album, because I mean, you go through all this kind of scope of emotions, scope of issues, and in some sense, it's like we're right back where we started.
Yeah, well, it is because then we have the what's going on kind of reprise, right? Where it comes back in. It's very, you come full circle. Yeah. And I have. I didn't know of this song. I mean, I knew of this song, but I don't think I ever put together that it was him off this album. The first time I remember hearing this is actually, it's in the movie Zodiac, and they're doing this time lapse, passage of time sequence of the Transamerica Pyramid in San Francisco being built. And so the song starts playing, and then you see the time lapse of the pyramid being built, and then you see a time lapse of turning day into night in the sky. And visually that's very striking, but I always loved that part in the movie, and I loved the way this song goes with it. And obviously, they were filmed and recorded at very, very different times, but I think that is probably around the time in the movie, or the time period in the movie when this song came out, so it fits in. But this song it is one of my favorites on the album, and it also has a very kind of autobiographical feel to it, because he uses words about breakups and setbacks. I can't pay my taxes. Yep. And so I love the opening piano. It's just I know. It's really put the hook in me. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite spots on the album for sure.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about bonus tracks or anything, because that is the album.
Nope.
And with that, I would say that you're definitely first on the tee. I think we're probably going to hit from the pro tees today, the blue or the black ones, or All
right, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
So
I will. I feel like there's a part of me that feels like an easy choice, and I really hope I don't go to hell for saying this, but God is Love. I could definitely skip that one for me. It's 1 minute and 42 seconds. There's just nothing about it that really stands out to me. And I also like Mercy, Mercy Me, the Ecology so much that I have no problem just getting right on to that song. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
I, in a very similar fashion, would do the same thing, but with Holy Holy.
I thought you might.
It's just, it's kind of slow for me. And You know, it gets so deep into religion where I'm like, all right. You know, he's talking about, he gave us a book to, you know, he really dives deep into it, which is fine. It's just, I don't know. It's a lot.
Hey, you want to get to Inner City Blues, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I do. I want to hear that piano intro.
Oh, I do, man. I do. I could listen to that over and over and over again for sure. Yep. Well, I think that kind of wraps up our Marvin Gaye. What's going on? Wouldn't you say there, dude?
Yeah, I'd say it's officially scratched.
Scratched. I don't know why I do an X when I say scratch, but it looks good.
Yeah, see, I feel like I need one of those sound effects machines with the record sound. That's as we get bigger and pick up big time sponsorships, we'll get one of those.
We'll definitely get that. We'll hire someone and they'll just like throw in those sound effects.
You just kind of look at them and snap.
Yeah, hey, boom. Like they'll know. So
yeah.
Well, on that note, everyone, that officially scratches out What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. A very good album. We highly recommend you check it out. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you enjoyed looking at our smiling faces, and we hope you continue to do so. So please subscribe, hit like, hit that bell, so that way you know every time the Dude and Grim open up or load up another Scratch a Track or another episode of another type.
Oh, there are surprises coming. Even more so than you've already. Yeah. A lot in the works here.
Minds will be blown. So,
yeah.
On that note, take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.
Scratch you later.
Bye.
Scratch a Track is produced by the Dude and Grim. Additional music provided by More. That's ... MORE in the Tims, TIMNZ. Copyright 2020, The Dude and Grim Show.